Most companies, when it comes to corporate culture, what they focus on is cognitive culture, which means they focus more on how employees think and behave with regards to their job. While that is really important, there is another very important ingredient for a successful company, and that is emotional culture. Emotional culture deals with the feelings that people have and express in the workplace. Research has found that emotional culture influences employee satisfaction and teamwork, and it strengthens our relationships at work. As a matter of fact, emotions have a great impact on our cognition as well, on our performance at our job, on our decision making, on our creativity, and on our commitment to our company. There are companies that use different ways to build and feed their emotional culture. For example, some have put up buttons with a smiley face, a frowny face, and so on, that employees press on their way out of work to show how they felt during that day. Others use apps like the Nico Nico app to collect such data and to enable employees to release some tension and have some fun. And then other companies hire consultants specialized in tracking the moods of their employees. On the other end of the spectrum, there are companies that don't dedicate any effort to emotional culture. And this does not lead to a lack of emotional culture, but more to an emotional culture of suppression. The leaders might put a big effort into influencing their employees in the way they think at work, but they will shy away from emotions. Some because they consider emotions at work to be irrelevant or even unprofessional, and then others because they don't know how to deal with them. According to the Affective Events Theory, there are 6 major kinds of emotions that we experience in the workplace: sadness, anger, fear, joy, surprise, and love. Why is it important that we express emotions in the workplace? To encourage empathy. By expressing our emotions at work, we make it easier for our colleagues to empathize with us. They can feel more empathy for what we are feeling because we express exactly what and how we are feeling, which enables them to put themselves in our shoes. At the same time, and especially if we are in a leading position, we encourage them to share their emotions to improve understanding. Sharing our emotions helps our colleagues understand us better and understand the motivation behind our decisions. Studies have shown that employees who understand why a decision has been made are much more likely to agree with and or respect that decision. At work, the logical reasoning behind a decision is the most important one, but the emotional stand behind it can have a big impact on making colleagues get on board. To manage conflicts. Keeping our emotions hidden from our colleagues can lead to conflicts, especially in the case of a negative emotion. We tend to hold on to negative emotions, and the longer they go hidden, the worse it gets. Not sharing emotions hurts not only us, but also our relationships with our colleagues, because emotions that we don't deal with build frustration and resentment, which then over time may transform into anger. To counter all this, we should talk about what we are feeling with our colleagues. If we feel frustrated because of an employee's lower performance in the last week, we should tell them that. Listen, I am feeling a little frustrated with your last week's performance. And then we could ask them whether there is a reason behind that and encourage them to do better. To get in touch with our human side. At work, it is generally our performance and technical skills that are appreciated. We could hear a lot of well done or great work, but rarely do we hear of people who get comments such as, "You made me proud today," or "It makes me so happy working with people like you." These comments can make people become more committed to us as a leader and feel more satisfaction and happier in the workplace, thus making them less likely to leave. Emotions can be a physiological, behavioral, or communicative reaction to stimuli. We feel the physiological reaction through changes in our heart rate, the feeling in our stomach, sweating. Some of these physiological reactions may not be noticeable at all by others unless we show it through our behavior or we communicate it to others. When it comes to communicating these reactions, we can choose the right way to let others know of the emotion that we are experiencing. We can leave it up to our impulsivity in the moment, or we can consciously choose the wrong way. There are 2 categories of emotions: primary emotions and secondary emotions. Primary emotions, which include joy, anger, surprise, fear, are innate emotions that appear rapidly and are experienced for a short period of time. We tend to identify primary emotions in us and others pretty easily. Secondary emotions are not as innate as primary emotions. They develop over time and they are mostly experienced in relation to others. Love, pride, shame, embarrassment are all secondary emotions. Secondary emotions require more processing than primary emotions, which means that it is more difficult for us to identify them and understand them. This is even more so when trying to understand the emotions that others are feeling. This is why it is important that we express the way we feel, especially secondary emotions. Now, it is true that some people are more capable at reading emotions than others are, and some people are better at expressing their emotions. However, we can always learn how to do better at reading and expressing emotions through knowledge, effort, and socialization. So what are a few things that can help us get better at this? First of all, in order to communicate our emotions verbally, we need an emotional vocabulary. This emotional vocabulary should have words that express 1. As specifically as possible our emotions, 2. The intensity of our emotions, and 3. Words that frame our emotions in such a way that it allows us to have more control over them. The first and second point can be improved by deciding to engage in more conversations about our emotions. And the third point becomes possible by taking ownership of our emotions and communicating it through the use of I language. For example, instead of saying your inability to make a decision is making me anxious, we could say I am feeling anxious because we can't seem to come to a decision. Secondly, the biggest part of our communication is nonverbal. This means that we can understand others and others can understand us better when communicating face to face. But what about when our only communication is verbal? Nowadays, most of our communication at work happens online via email or messages on Slack or other apps. And while online communication has its advantages, mainly giving us the opportunity to think thoroughly about what we want to communicate and our choice of words, it also has its disadvantages. First of all of our nonverbal communication is gone, an important part of emotional sharing. And second, there is no immediate feedback. If in face-to-face communication we can immediately see how the other person is responding to our communication of emotion and we can adjust accordingly, when done online, there is no way for us to know that. Thirdly, there are some ways for us to encourage a good emotional culture in our workplace. 1. Start with micro expressions. Instead of thinking that we have to make a bold declaration of how we are feeling, we can start with small gestures that show our openness and support for our colleagues or express our emotional response to minor events at work. 2. Start with yourself. As with everything else, we can be the ones who start something new. For instance, even though we don't see our colleagues expressing themselves in moments when they are feeling satisfied or frustrated, one moment during the workday when we feel satisfied with our work or frustrated, we can make the conscious decision of sharing it with our colleagues. That very moment when we feel that way, or during a coffee break or during lunch. When our colleagues see us expressing our emotions, they will start to do so as well, because of emotional contagion, according to which people in groups catch feelings from one another. We should be mindful about expressing positive feelings too, and not only negative ones. 3. Body language and facial expressions. Some people express what they are feeling through their body language and facial expressions and not communicate it. Very often, the reason could be that they don't know whether they should express their feelings in the workplace, especially if it doesn't happen that often. We can use that information that we can read from their body language and facial expressions to ask them about their feelings. Of course, respecting their desire to not do so if they don't wish to share. 4. Make fun an explicit cultural value. Many companies organize team buildings on a regular basis to make sure that people focus not only on work, but also on enjoying their job, working with their colleagues and in the company. Since such gatherings generally happen a few times a year, or maybe once a year, we could organize smaller events that happen more frequently in order to make our working environment more enjoyable, and in this way, management can keep track of the emotions that dominate inside the company. This is something that we could do even though we might be working remotely. We could fix a certain time during the day or during the week where we meet virtually with our colleagues to just have fun or to discuss about the feelings that we've been having in the last week. Something that has become part of companies that practice the agile methodology. And 5, don't overdo it. Sometimes too much fun and positive feelings in the workplace or outside of work with colleagues might get in the way of work and other necessary things that make work work, like solving conflicts. And other times, focusing so much on having fun and positive feelings overall becomes a deterrent to expressing our negative feelings, because it is important being able to express our negative feelings too, and not in a destructive, venting way, but rather in a way that allows us to come up with an alternative approach to subside the negative feelings. This is an area that for many people is not within their comfort zone, and they will resist discussing it. But it has been, it currently is, and it will always be important and have a strong impact on our lives, not only at work, but everywhere else as well. This is why I consider it as important as to talk about it here. And I would encourage you to do the same. Talk more about emotions, and especially start getting comfortable with expressing and communicating your emotions. You will find that by doing this, you will also learn to manage your emotions better and have positive and negative emotions have an overall positive effect in your life. I will see you in the next video, and until then, have an amazing week.